Welcome to the Mini Book Podcast, African American Books Edition. Today, we are opening up a text that is honestly one of the most transformative history books I have ever come across. We are looking at The Price for Their Pound of Flesh, The Value of the Enslaved, From Womb to Grave, in the Building of a Nation by Daina Ramey Berry.
It's a heavy title, I know.
It is.
But it's an absolutely essential read if you want to understand the actual economic machinery that built the United States.
Before we get into all that, we do want to be transparent that these voices come from AI, but the content comes straight from the book.
Right, and we feel that this is just a great way to learn about African American history.
Our mission here is really to break down complex topics, and words and explain what they mean, so this history is accessible to everyone.
Exactly. We wanted to take this high-level scholarship and make it something you can really grasp.
We thank you for listening, and please consider subscribing for future content. And seriously, after hearing this podcast, we would encourage you to go out and purchase this book and support the author.
Oh, absolutely. There is so much detail in Daina Ramey Berry's work. I mean, charts, letters, ledgers, that we can only scratch the surface of today.
It is an incredible work of research.
And honestly, the impact hits you before you even open page one. It hits you right there on the cover.
You mean the title, The Price for Their Pound of Flesh.
Exactly.
It's impossible to read that and not immediately think of Shakespeare, right? The Merchant of Venice.
That is exactly where Berry wants your mind to go. She is setting the stage immediately. I mean, think about what that phrase actually means in the play. A pound of flesh is a debt that can be paid with the debtor's body.
Right. It isn't money. It's not a check. It is physical.
Precisely. So by using that reference, Berry is signaling that we aren't just talking about labor economics here.
Not just cotton or tobacco.
No. We are talking about a system that claimed ownership over the flesh, blood, and bones of human beings. It signals that this system exacted a price at every single stage of existence.
And that idea, that price tag on a human life, is really the core conflict of the book.
It is.
Berry sets up this tension between two very different types of value. You have market value and then soul value.
This is the heartbeat of the text. If you get this, you get the whole book. Market value is, well, it's exactly what it sounds like.
It's the price tag.
It's the price tag, the dollar amount placed on a human body by traders, by enslavers, by insurers. It's a number on a piece of paper.
Which fluctuates, right, like a stock price.
It fluctuates wildly based on age, health, skill, the economy. But then you have soul value.
Okay.
And that is the internal self-worth that enslaved people held for themselves.
The part that couldn't be sold.
Exactly. The belief that they were children of God, that they possessed a spirit, that they had dignity regardless of what the auctioneer said. The book is really about the war between those two concepts.
To understand how the market tried to do that crushing, we have to grapple with a word that comes up constantly in this book, commodification. Now, we usually hear that word about, like oil or grain?
Right, pork bellies. But here you have to apply that same cold, hard logic to human beings. Commodification is simply the mechanism of turning a person into a product.
A product.
It's the process where you stop seeing a human being with feelings and a family, and you start seeing a violently acquired asset. You don't have to empathize with a tractor, right?
Just calculate its worth.
Exactly.
Daina Ramey Berry actually talks about how she came to this topic through her own life, doesn't she? It wasn't just academic for her.
No, not at all. It was personal. She writes about growing up in a community where she was taught to value her blackness, her history. But then she describes encountering the outside world and feeling that devaluation.
Why?
It sparked this question. How have Black bodies been valued and devalued historically?
That research led her to some devastating findings. There's one quote she found from a formerly enslaved man named Henry Banner that just stopped me in my tracks. He said, "I was sold for $2,300 more than I'm worth now."
It's a gut punch of a line.
It is.
And you have to be really careful how you interpret it.
Because at first glance, it sounds like he isn't saying he preferred slavery, is he?
No, absolutely not. He's highlighting the tragic irony of the American economic system. Under slavery, his market value was incredibly high because he was a piece of property that generated wealth for someone else. He was a high-value asset.
But once he was a free man,
the price tag disappears, and he enters a racist society that refuses to pay him fair wages, that refuses to hire him, refuses to acknowledge his humanity, so his economic worth dropped.
So the market valued him more as a tool than society valued him as a man.
That's the tragedy. It perfectly illustrates that gap between price and human worth.
Now, the book tracks this valuation chronologically, literally from birth to death. But what blew my mind was how early this valuation starts. And I don't mean at birth. I mean before the child even exists.
Preconception.
It sounds like science fiction, but it was legal reality. The book talks about a term called future increase.
This is where the commodification is at its most chilling. Future increase is a term borrowed straight from livestock management.
From livestock.
Yes. If you sold a cow, you might sell the rights to her future calves. The law applied that exact same framework to enslaved women.
So you could buy a woman, and the contract effectively says, I also own the children she might have 5 years from now.
That is it. It is the ultimate form of speculation. You are investing in the biological potential of a human being, betting on the fertility of a woman's body before she's even pregnant.
That creates a horrifying incentive structure.
Yeah.
It turns the mother's body into a factory.
And the mothers knew this. There's the story of Adeline in the book.
Oh, Adeline's story is visceral. I can still picture this scene.
Right.
She was on the auction block, holding her infant son.
Right.
The text describes her gripping him so tightly to her chest. She's trying to shield him. And the auctioneer sees this fear, this mother's instinct, and he mocks her.
He uses it as part of the show.
He jeers at her, saying the child wouldn't trouble her purchaser long.
Just think about the cruelty of that statement. He's implying he was going to sell the baby separately. Or maybe that the child would die soon since infant mortality was so high.
It's a sales pitch. Don't worry. Buy the woman. The kid won't be a burden.
Exactly. To the enslaver, a dead infant was a loss of investment, a line item. But to the mother, that is a loss of a soul. That's the clash of values right there.
So let's say a child survives that dangerous infancy. They enter childhood. And the book points out that there's this strange period where things are almost normal.
Relative to what comes later, yes. Berry notes that up until about age 10, enslaved children often played with white children. They ran around, played tag. The strict racial hierarchy wasn't fully enforced yet.
But then comes the shift.
Yes. Around age 10, everything changes. The white child is sent off to school, trained to be the master, and the black child is forced to realize they are property. The play stops. The labor begins.
There is a specific story about a man named Mingo White who remembers this exact moment of realization.
Mingo White was just a little boy, maybe 4 or 5 years old.
A toddler, basically.
Basically. And he remembers being lifted up onto a stand and auction block, and suddenly these strange men are surrounding him. They aren't talking to him, they're touching him.
Squeezing his arms.
Squeezing his legs, checking his teeth, feeling his muscles. Imagine being 4 years old and strangers are groping you to see if you're sturdy.
That has to be the moment where the world just breaks.
It's a psychological fracture. Mingo says his enslaver actually coached him on how to answer questions to make him seem more valuable. That is the moment a child learns, I am not a person, I am a transaction.
The book also mentions a term here that was part of this horrible education, the coffle.
Right, a coffle, C-O-F-F-L-E. It refers to a line of enslaved people chained together, often forced to march long distances to market.
And the image the book paints is of children standing on the side of the road watching these coffles pass by.
It was a visual warning. Children would see these chains, hear the clanking, see the misery, and realize that this was their potential future. It was a terrifying form of education.
So they grow up. They hit their 20s. This is what the book calls prime adulthood.
From an economic standpoint, this is when market value peaked. The body is fully grown, strongest and most capable of hard labor.
But the valuation was different for men and women, wasn't it?
It was split. For men, the value was driven by physical strength and specialized skills. A blacksmith, a carpenter, or just being incredibly strong. Your price went up.
And for women?
For women, it was labor plus reproduction. This is where you see the disturbing reality of breeding advertisements. Women were marketed based on their fertility. Good breeder was a selling point.
Their wombs were monetized.
Just as much as their hands were.
It is repulsive.
Yeah.
How did people survive that kind of dehumanization? How do you keep going?
This is where we have to talk about soul value again.
Yeah.
It became an act of resistance. They survived by rejecting the market's definition of them.
By holding on to something else.
They loved their families ferociously. They practiced religion. They taught their children that they mattered to God, even if the law said they were property.
There's a powerful anecdote about a woman named Fanny.
Yes. Fanny was on the auction block. She had a baby with her. And her older son, Gilbert, was standing nearby. She knew they were likely going to be separated.
So what does she do?
First, she covers her baby. She shields it from the buyers, an act of defiance. But then she starts praying, aloud. She's signaling to Gilbert. She is telling him to trust in God.
She's giving him spiritual instructions for a life without her.
Exactly. She couldn't give him freedom. She couldn't give him money, but she could give him soul value. She was telling him that there is a power higher than the auctioneer. That internal belief is how they survived.
But time moves on, and as the body ages, the market value changes. What happens to the elderly?
The book uses a specific term here, superannuated.
Superannuated. Let's break that word down. It sounds bureaucratic.
It is. In this context, it basically means obsolete or retired due to age. But in the brutal logic of slavery, it meant someone considered too old or worn out to be productive.
So what happens to their price tag?
It drops, and eventually it hits zero. There are records of elderly people being valued at nothing on plantation ledgers.
$0.
$0. To the market, they were worthless. But, and this is the crucial part, this is where the gap between market value and soul value is the widest. Because while the market said zero, the enslaved community said priceless.
These were the elders.
These were the granny midwives who birthed the babies. These were the spiritual leaders, the keepers of history, the ones who remembered the ancestors. Their value to their people was immeasurable.
There's a story of an elderly man named Ponto that I just loved. He's on the auction block.
It's tragic. He's up there, and the auctioneer is trying to get a bid. He shouts at Ponto, "Stand up, show the gentlemen your teeth, show them what you can do."
Treating him like an old horse.
Exactly. And Ponto refuses. He mumbles. He doesn't perform. He defies the auctioneer. He knew his market value was low, but he also knew his dignity wasn't up for negotiation.
So we've covered birth, life, old age. Logic would dictate that the market value stops at death. The asset is gone.
You would think so. But here is where Daina Ramey Berry uncovers something truly dark. She calls it ghost value.
Ghost value. That sounds ominous.
It is. It refers to the price placed on a dead body. You see, the 19th century saw a boom in American medical schools. UPenn, Harvard, Medical College of Georgia, they needed to teach anatomy.
And to teach anatomy, you need cadavers.
Correct. But white society generally considered dissection a desecration. They didn't want their loved ones cut up. So the medical schools turned to the bodies of the marginalized, the poor, and especially the enslaved.
So a person could be worked to death, die, and then their body is sold again to a medical school.
Yes. The sale didn't stop at death. The body was still a commodity.
This leads us to the story of Grandison Harris. This was fascinating and so complicated.
Who was he?
Grandison Harris was an enslaved man who was purchased by the Medical College of Georgia specifically for this purpose.
Purchased by the college?
Yes. His job description was resurrectionist. That's a polite 19th century term for a grave robber. So he was a black man, enslaved by college, and forced to rob the graves of black people.
Exactly. He had to go into cemeteries, often where members of his own community were buried, steal the bodies, and bring them back to the students for dissection.
The psychological trauma of that, being forced to be part of the machinery that commodifies your own people.
It's a layer of trauma that is hard to even fathom. He was caught in an impossible situation.
And then there's the story of Nat Turner. We know him as the leader of the famous rebellion, but I didn't know what happened to his body.
It's one of the most gruesome examples in the book. After he was executed, he wasn't buried. His body was given over to doctors.
Treated as a specimen.
Worse than a specimen, a trophy. The book details how his body was essentially dismantled. His skull, his skin.
No.
They were turned into heirlooms and study objects.
That is the ultimate attempt to strip away humanity. Even in death, they wouldn't let him be a man.
It was punishment, yes, but it was also profit and curiosity. It was the total rejection of his soul value. They wanted to reduce him entirely to biological material.
So we've looked at this horrifying trajectory. Preconception, childhood, adulthood, old age, and even post-death. The market value is just relentless. It feels overwhelming.
It is overwhelming. But the book doesn't end on defeat. And that's why the concept of soul value is so important. Daina Ramey Berry argues that despite all of this, the ledgers, the auctions, the grave robbing, the soul value remained constant.
The market price went up and down, but the soul remained untouched.
Exactly. The enslavers could control the body. They could price the pound of flesh. But they could never actually own the spirit.
There's a closing image in the book that sums this up so beautifully. The poem by Mingo.
Yes. Mingo was a prisoner, likely a formerly enslaved man, and he scratched a poem on the wall of his cell.
What did it say?
He wrote about an immortal part of himself. He basically said, you can lock me up, you can do what you want to my body, but there is a part of me that is immortal, a part that you cannot buy, sell, or touch.
That is the triumph, isn't it?
It is. The history of slavery is undeniably a history of economics of cold, hard, brutal capitalism. But more importantly, as this book shows, it is a history of the resilience of the human spirit. The fact that soul value survived at all is a miracle of resistance.
That is a powerful place to leave it. This book, The Price for Their Pound of Flesh, is a heavy read, but it transforms how you see American history.
It really does. It makes you realize that the story isn't just about labor, it's about the definition of humanity itself.
We want to thank you for listening to this discussion. Please, if you found this valuable, subscribe to our mini-book podcast. And we want to hear from you. Please suggest in the comments other books that you would like to hear in future episodes.
We do read the comments, and we love finding new historical texts to explore.
And finally, please go out and support Daina Ramey Berry by purchasing this book. It is an essential addition to any library. Thank you for subscribing and listening.
Thank you.